Right, so my name is Ranako Bailey, and I am one of the co-founders in We Talking Bois. In addition to We Talking Bois, I am a part of the Guild of Students here at Cape campus, more specifically in the position of Faculty of Social Sciences representative. What inspired me is seeing over the years working with 16 Days of Activism. The question is that men always say that, and it is, even though it is true, that men do also experience gender-based violence, but there's still a large proportion of gender-based violence experienced by females. And unfortunately, the perpetrators for that is men. So one of the things that got me thinking is how then can we move men from a position of cause and involve them more into the solution. I can't remember the exact author, but there's an author that says if women could have solved gender-based violence, they really would have solved it ever since. I think feedback is always something we're always concerned about. Even in the planning phases of the organization, I too myself was concerned in terms of the possible opposition. And other members of my founding team would have told me just go with it. But so far the support has been fantastic. It has been by far more than what I probably would have initially expected. There are many myths about masculinity. So some of the steps that we have taken into debunking these myths is to have frank conversations with guys, whether it be on our Discord server or Instagram Live. More recently, the topic of focus unintentionally this year would have been relationships. So discussion on relationships, whether it be on our Discord server or on Instagram Live. And in those discussions, we usually have facts to assist in the discussion, and we usually have realistic male experiences to assist and to guide the discussions. I think at the faculty level was kind of a bigger approach in terms of not specifically addressing males, or the audience specifically is not males as it is with We Talking Bois, but is rather in terms of our community, social sciences. I think one of the things that this is kind of prefacing it, but one of the things that we would beginning to do is engage in dialogue around gender-based violence, and that's specific. We're starting with at the students committee level. So at the students committee level, it would kind of expand to, as positions of authority, positions of power, but it would include gender-based violence and how we should not be using our roles essentially. In terms of 16 Days of Activism, one of the things that we would begin starting is what are we calling it? We're calling it Orange Wednesdays, where every Wednesday we would wear our orange in support of gender-based violence, and we're also having some videos of students talk about gender-based violence and what a world without gender-based violence means to them. We believe that collaboration is very key to this, so we have been collaborating and continue to collaborate with the Institute of Gender, Nita Barrow Unit, and we would also continue to collaborate with the regional faculties of social sciences in terms of our 16 Days of Activism, because we find it very important that we do speak up in terms of these issues, not only gender-based violence against women, but gender-based violence on a whole. Specifically within We Talking Bois, we're looking at expanding how we engage. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we would have had to push a lot of things online. So one of the ways that we're expanding is some Twitter Spaces, some more IG Lives with not only We Talking Bois, but other organizations which surrounds themselves, whether it be masculinity or gender-based violence or women's rights. We would have actually because of the work of We Talking Bois, we would have actually began some work with Caribbean Male Action Network. And so as we expand with partnerships and collaborations, we continue to engage men in the necessary way that we need to. Some of the emerging concerns, I think there are many, but in terms of, for sure, communication, because sometimes persons may not be well aware as to how to communicate their ideas, and then sometimes that causes a lot of issues, even in relationships. Another thing is many youth, and thankfully many youth are not afraid as to tackling issues or whatever the case may be, but knowing the direction to take to tackle that issue and who to engage and how to engage, because I think it's very good to engage persons, but you have to engage them at their level and not the level that you would want to engage them at. I personally believe that love involves an element of trust. With all that you would have mentioned, that part of trust is more so questioned. Because of our society and the box that society puts some or most males in, you do see that being intertwining. I could remember engaging with youth at a school, and they were like, but she loves me, so I should be able to track her phone, I should be able to know where she is. And the reality is that's not really the case. Every relationship, every interaction is going to be specific. So to have that, so it is very much sadly conflated, but I think the two are separate. One being of needing control or whatever the case may be. Because really and truly, I think love has an element of trust, and those things that you would have mentioned just now really brings trust into question. I think this is probably a very simple answer, but within the simple answer, it has its complexities. Something as simple as communication. And communication does not just mean conversation, because we communicate differently. Communication in body language, because you may be having a conversation, but the person is not willing to or not able to communicate verbally what they're trying to express, and for example, they may cry. But then how do you as a partner understand that person and understand what their tears mean? So I think communication is really the simple solution. Communication, dialogue. Dialogue does not only mean verbal, but non-verbal, and understanding each other, and essentially walking along with each other along the pathway. Social media has definitely impacted our view towards relationships, because the reality is a relationship is, yes, it is two persons, but they're two individual persons, and we should really all understand that it's two individual persons. What social media has done is that social media has created the mindset that, for example, in a relationship, you must always be happy, and if you are not happy, that's the natural end of the relationship. To a certain degree, we kind of try to keep up with the various appearances, whether it be on YouTube, Instagram, or whatever, not really fully understanding or even sometimes seeing what happens behind the scenes. Social media relationship has kind of generalized rather than keeping it specific to the two parties involved. Social media has kind of generalized and changed our view into kind of like a utopian view of what a relationship is, and when we don't get that, or when we don't get a glimpse of that, we tend to try to change the narrative or say, well, it is this person don't like me, or this person is doing something and is constantly getting me upset. When in reality it's just that you are not understanding them. You are understanding social media relationships, but you're understanding your partner, you are understanding yourself. And I think social media definitely has caused us to make a hard left in terms of relationships and the reality of relationships, because it's not all smiles and cuddles or whatever. I think it furthers, because, I've watched a couple in terms of the relationships that they put on. And, generally the social media relationships, they're well together, they work well together. Some may even have, as you mentioned, the obsession. Some may even have, they may have agreed, but I don't think that's necessarily obsession, but they may have agreed that, for whatever reason, I share my location in case of emergency or whatever the case may be. I think we've taken that and drive it fully towards the extreme in terms of the possessiveness, always wanting to know where the person is, what they're doing. And at the same time, it kind of reflects our character and why we were probably even on social media in the first place. That there's something lacking within ourselves that we found on social media, and then, we've decided to enter a relationship, and we may not fully understand that we're not ready for a relationship, but then because of that, we've become possessive, we've become demanding. What I say goes. You don't listen. You just hear. So I think social media kind of sparked, because of that generalization, we tend to stick on that line of generalization and ensuring that, when we get in a relationship, this is what happens. And it is really bad because, again, in engaging with some secondary school students, one of the first things when we asked about what is a relationship, they automatically talked about sharing passwords. That is like, they automatically talk about sharing passwords, knowing where the person is, because if they don't know where the person is cheating. Not reality. So I think the generalization has caused us as human beings to think a lot, and as we think a lot, we've gone to the extreme in certain cases in terms of relationship behaviors.